Hi, and welcome to Northwest Book Talk. I am Patty Grasher, and my guest today is Jonno Heyne. And he is a graphic artist and novelist that produces, I think you've produced like over 20 books, which is pretty darn amazing. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about your journey, but let's go mostly into your books and how you got started with that. So first, Jonno, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Patty. I appreciate it.
Your first book was what? What was your first book, and how did you get started with that?
Okay. Well, my first book, I was in an art class in college over at Clark College. There was a project where I had to create kind of the cover of a pulpy fiction novel. I just started getting inspired by the idea that I think like some really gritty, out of place superhero characters would make for a great pulp story. So I started creating characters that I thought would belong in something that would be a trashy novel. And characters just started appearing in my head, started putting them together. And the next thing I knew, they were starting to tell a story. I quickly realized I needed to build a fence around that and start building a narrative about these crazy, kind of out of place characters that typically nobody would really want or count on. But because they're all together, they develop a particular strength.
So you kind of move from that trashy novel type or cover to actually create a comic book or a graphic novel.
I just started writing. It was weird. I didn't have a plan at first. I wrote the first issue with no plan at all. I was just going to start telling a story. And I realized it became an ode to my family as all the characters started to develop the traits of family and friends. And the next thing I knew, they were writing themselves, if that makes sense. I think every author has a point where they realize to get out of the way and just let things go. And I found that I never had a chance to really get in the way of these characters. They just started running. Every time I would develop a new character, more or less just to because I needed a new character, I found them all very inspiring. And so I was able to just build on this little cluster of story ideas I was throwing together and drawing as quick as I could. And I said, I need to write a solid narrative for this. I need to start at the beginning and tell this story from scratch. And so I sat down and I thought of all the comic book references and history and stories that I loved. And I said, I want to make an homage to these great writers and stories, borrowing without stealing, and create this group of characters that I can say to my friends someday, yeah, this was you. This story is about how I feel about you. And ever since it's just taken off. I've written 24 books
Oh, wow.
for Tiki and Carrot, and have produced 8 of them so far. I try to do them in groups of 8 so that way, after this 8th one, I can look around and see if anybody wants more. Otherwise, I'm at a good stopping point, I guess you could say. I am a big movie buff, and so I feel like everything has to be a trilogy.
Yeah, that works. So you said you make some of your characters after families and friends. Do any of them recognize themselves, or is it just way out? They would never recognize themselves.
Oh, visually, maybe not, but definitely. Of course, I tell people straight up. I'm like, I've been thinking about you the whole time I was crafting this particular character, and I do work really hard, make these characters kind of love letters to the people that I've based them on. Tiki is kind of myself. He's this kind of I would say he's this naive character that's always looking for the good in people, but he makes a good narrator to the story because he is, while he's an active member of the story, he's there observing everyone else. Carrot is this kind of amplified, cartoonish version of my wife and my daughter, who has this great strength and this conviction They conflict a lot because Tiki is kind of a soft-handed individual and Carrot is borderline vigilante, but they are so good for each other. And I find that many times the characters that I choose are people that I've interacted with. And I think, well, how would this person interact with the other characters that I've written in my book? And it's fun because I just throw people in. It would be as if you could take groups of your friends and throw them into an escape room, I think, together and see if they can figure their way out, even though they don't know each other. I do a lot of that in my stories. I like the idea that this universe I've created has room for everybody, and I can just have them bump into each other and have adventures.
Yeah, so I did a little research back there, and one of the things it says is that you kind of like to choose the underdog or the person that's kind of maybe wouldn't be your typical hero. How did you come about figuring that out, that that's the way you wanted to go with your books?
Well, most of the heroes that I find are the universe I've created has a certain set of rules that I try to make everyone adhere to. And one of them is for every big positive, you have an equal big negative. This is, to me, the most important thing about a hero is that they are not just strong, they're not just smart, they don't just have superpowers, but they actually have conflict that goes with those things. Most of the time, the people I choose as underdogs are characters that have been given a gift that they don't necessarily understand, that they don't necessarily embrace, but it's their gift. Some people use those gifts for the betterment of things, some just for the betterment of themselves, some for the betterment of nobody. But it's the relationship with this gift that you don't get to choose that makes my favorite superheroes. And so when I see people who have gifts, I always want to encourage those gifts in them and in my characters. I'm always feeling this need to put my characters through adventures that will let them grow, to take advantage of what they have. There's a slogan that is often repeated in my stories. I cannot remember who originally said it, but it was do what you can with what you have where you are. And all of the people that I write about have at least a moment in time where they have to stop, look at what they can do and what they can't do, and make decisions about how to make the world better based on that.
Oh, that's profound. I love that. Do what you can. Now say it again. Do what you can with.
Do what you can with what you have
Yeah,
where you are.
that's great. That's good. So I want to kind of refer back a little bit. You said that you, as a young child, you had trouble reading, and that you found the graphic novels or comics were a way that you could read. How does that play into your whole story?
Well, about seventh grade, I kind of had to self-diagnose the fact that I had some mild dyslexia. When I look at a page of text, the words all start jumping around. It's very difficult for me to sit down in front of a novel, especially a novel, because I will get halfway through a page, realize I've lost track, have to go back, read it again and again. It takes me forever to get through anything. That was tricky when you were in seventh grade writing book reports about Catcher in the Rye and Of Mice and Men. Uh, I was a Cliff Note kind of kid, and I cheated a lot on my exams, I will admit. But at one point, one day at lunch, I bumped into a guy who was a friend, and he had a copy of Batman: The Dark Knight Returns, which was this a graphic novel. It was four comic books all bundled together, and he traded it for a sandwich. My mom made a mean tuna sandwich, and he knew it, and so he swapped me this book for the sandwich. And I sat down and started reading it. It made itself the first book I had ever read cover to cover. without having to, write a report on it anyway. And I discovered at that point that if there's a photo in the picture or in a book, something that gives me a visual, I'm able to really grasp things better within the text. Small chunks of text I loved, and next thing I knew, I go, this really kind of works for me. So I started seeking out more books like that, and then I started kind of writing my own stories that would make for good comic books someday.
So you started that even in as a very what, high school or whatever, starting writing these little comic stories just for yourself?
Yeah, it's about the time I got into middle school. I just I would write pages and pages and pages of scripts, and I always thought I didn't have a lot of confidence in my drawing skills at the time, and so I would write these scripts and come up with these characters and sketch them all out, and then I would just put them away. Um, they would hide and collect dust for years at a time before I would ever crack them open and look at them and kind of critique my own writing and redo things and celebrate the things I got right. But it was how I learned to start using my imagination to tell the stories I wasn't finding in the comic books already. And so my friends would all get involved and they would help me edit. They would again be inspiring. Most of my stories, of course, would just be like a group of my friends would sit down and we would all just come up with the craziest things that we could do if we were superheroes, and I would just scribble away. And then, of course, they wouldn't amount to much because, again, they would have to go through this process of being stored for a year before I'd go back and look at them.
Wow, that's kind of fun. I mean, that it's a, I think what comes out in the books is that it is kind of a group. I don't know. I wouldn't say authorship, but you do have the characters that kind of stay true to themselves and kind of like larger than life, and they're kind of snarky and fun. We're going to take a short appreciation break for our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
Programming on KXRW is supported by our partner BKB Marketing Agency, your local source for Camano Island coffee. Since 2000, Camano Island Coffee Roasters has been dedicated to roasting organic, shade-grown, fairly traded beans. Through their Coffee Lovers Club, fresh roasted coffee is shipped within 48 hours, supporting farming families around the world through direct trade relationships. To order Camano coffee locally, email bkbmarketingagency@gmail.com.
For over 20 years, Vancouver Family Magazine has been covering local news, recreation, travel, education, parenting, personalities, and more. We connect your family to people, places, ideas, organizations, helpful resources, and local stories. Pick up your copy every month at over 300 locations all around Clark County, or read online at vancouverfamilymagazine.com. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and X for even more local news and family fun at Vancouver Family.
You are listening to Northwest Book Talk with Patty Grasher, and I'm talking with Jonno Heyne, who is a cartoonist and graphic novelist. So we'll continue with our program, and thank you for staying with us. So what made you put the first book together and put it out for publication? What was that catalyst that moved you to do that?
Well, I just kind of decided one day it needed to be done. I know that's a silly thing to say. It's like, well, that's an obvious answer. But I came to realize, well, life is short. It was weird. I had this kind of life is short moment where I said, I will regret not creating while I can. And I had a story that was in my head that was really moving my heart. And I said, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't feel like I'm qualified, but I realized at that point I couldn't afford to care anymore. So I began writing and creating and crafting and publishing before I gave myself enough time to get that self-doubt going and put the story in a closet for a year. I said, today I shall just push through. And so and this is good advice to any new artist, by the way, is don't wait till it's perfect. In fact, don't even wait until you think it's good. We live in a modern era where if you have an idea, it's more important to put it on paper and share it with people and have an experience together with them and get feedback and share your vision of things than it is to have this perfectly polished classic novel just come out on your first try. I am still a long way from ever producing anything I think is perfect. I'm just happy if it comes out somewhat inspired.
Oh, yes. I tell you, my favorite quote when 1,000 years ago was, I don't remember where I heard it, but if a job's worth doing, it's worth doing poorly. And that it sounds counter, but that gave me the confidence, I guess, to just to do my first book, but also even like to do radio. I mean, it's like, okay, we're just going to do it. We're not great, but we'll just do it. And it's that freedom that you can do a job and it doesn't have to be perfect. And the full analogy, I have words stuck in my tongues here, but the thing that I think often over and over is about parents. If parents waited to be perfect before they had kids and before they, did their best, it's like we would never have any kids because nobody is ever ready to do the next step, I think. It's like we kind of have to bumble into it and bumble along. But if it's worth doing, it's worth raising your kid, it's worth writing your book, it's worth putting yourself out there, even in a social media way that maybe you come across as a blubbering idiot or whatever. But if it's worth doing, even if it helps just one person or maybe just helps yourself, it is worth doing. So, how about some of the feedback that you've gotten from your books?
I love the feedback. I love that it is not always positive. One of the things I appreciate the most about the company I keep is that I seek out people who are unafraid to say how they feel. If I create something and it's a bad idea, I want to know before I waste a lot of time with it. So I sit with my family. My daughter and my wife are particularly I don't know if I'm happy that this is this way now, but I've trained them to be very downright sarcastic as far as my work goes. And I will come up with an idea, and I know it's outlandish. That's the whole point. Every good idea starts outlandish, and see where they're at with it. If they just kind of shake their heads and go, "That's terrible. Please don't do that." Then I can at least look at that and say, okay, that was terrible. And I've had at least one request not to do it. So now I can sit and ponder what that really means. I don't always take it as, well, this is bad, I'm going to throw it away. Sometimes I take it as, well, that sounds like a challenge to make that idea flesh out as something that really is reasonable. And so about half the time I'll go back to the drawing board and I'll come up with a slightly different variation on that theme, something that will take it in a different direction. And I throw it back at them like it's new. Wait to see what the response is.
You've done 24 books. What's the time length? Is each book all by itself as far as how much time it takes, or have you kind of got into a system and a feel for how long it's going to take to come up with a book and get it published?
If a person's looking at my books, it's interesting. They will probably detect the life that's going on in the background of during the writing. Some books I've taken forever to do, and I hate that because my process is, I guess, at best unrefined at this point in my career. I will produce a children's book from the time I come up with the idea to the time it's published in about 2 months, if things go smoothly. I'm waiting for that day when things go smoothly.
Right.
As it is, probably a graphic novel will take almost a year, which isn't terrible when I consider that I do all of the work with a graphic novel. I write it, I pencil it, I illustrate it, I ink it. Any process that needs done, I have to rely on myself. Most of the time, people will say a graphic novel should take a few months to do, but that's with a crew. Uh, I think that most of the folks that I work with get discouraged because they do take forever sometimes to get your ideas out on paper and then visible to others. But I tell people just push through. It will take time, but time can fly. And I am hoping that with a little bit more refinement of my writing process, I'll be able to produce books faster. But there's part of those books that's also important to me to be able to go, yeah, I was writing that when my dad died, or I was writing that during a move time when I had to turn off my computer and not look at my work for a month while I moved to a different house and plugged everything back in, or yeah, any possible relationship change or whatever will, if you want it to, can show up in your book, in your stories. And I think that there's room for that to make the stories a little deeper and a little bit more textured.
So let's talk about how you get your books out to the world. I know they're on Amazon, but how do you connect with your audience and build it?
Um, I use Amazon as a publisher more than anything else. I sell books on Amazon, and that's swell, but most of the time I get the best results and the best responses going to Comic Cons and book fairs, any place where I can get out in front of folks and show them books. It's the energy of having someone walk by, see a title, see a splash of artwork, see something that draws their attention, and then a little bit of salesmanship on my part, pulling them in and getting them to go, hey, you want to take a look at the rest of this? Come take it. Come see. People give the best feedback at that point because you can watch people in real time starting up a relationship with a book and deciding whether or not they want to finish it based on their first impulses, what they see in the artwork, that sort of thing. People put it down and walk away. Sometimes people put it down and tell me what they don't like about it. Sometimes people just go crazy and they're like, I want all of them. Anything is possible when you're at a book fair or a convention, because that's when the people come to you and they can see you, interact with you, and learn about the story from the perspective of the author, which is always to me very fascinating and kind of a rare experience. Most of the time you go to a bookstore, you have what's written on the back of the book, and that's it. You do have to judge that book by its cover, at least when you're me and you can't read the book very far. From a marketing perspective, it's all about what am I able to do to put myself in front of folks that I can talk to about my stories, chat with them about what they want from, in their books. That gives me great ideas too, because people would say, it'd be really cool is if somebody had a book about, do you have a book about kids that have ADHD? And as it happens, for a while, I didn't. Now I can say I do. And it's great fun and very important to be able to say, why, yes, in fact, pick up this book, tell me what you think, and grow from that experience of exchanging ideas with people.
So I have to kind of wind it up, but one of my last question is, what do parents think about their child reading these kind of books, especially like you say, for those who have maybe not an attention deficit disorder, but like you say, the dyslexia or whatever. Have you ever had any comments from parents in a very positive way that this book has helped their child to kind of feel okay?
I actually, it sounds cliche and you're not going to believe me when I tell you, because I don't believe it myself sometimes, but I have had parents come up and share their children's experiences with the books that very much mirror mine. My son is not a big reader, but I picked up one of your books last year and brought it home, and they connected with the imagery or the humor or something like that, and you became a favorite book. And I'm like, oh, that's so fun. It's something that I don't know I would have expected to happen, but it's so cool when you have unfiltered experience of being able to move someone with a story. I had a kid at a convention one time, and he was so much fun. He loved trains, and one of my Tiki and the Carrot stories takes place on a train. And so the first thing he does is he goes, "Is this a real train?" I go, "Well, I mean, it's an illustrated train, but it's based on a real train." So he sits down and he starts reading the book, and he picks apart how my train is not technically accurate. And I'm like, I don't know what to take from this exactly. I don't know enough about trains to make this accurate for this kid. And he goes, his mom kind of takes me aside and he says, he's never read a book like that before. I sold him that book. I can't wait because I'm going back to that convention again next year. I know that kid. I'll remember that kid. And if he comes back, it will be the biggest victory in all of literature. If he comes back and criticizes my next book for something.
Oh, that's cool. So I know you're going to be at the Northwest Book Fair, so that's going to be awesome. Where else can people connect with you to find your books?
In addition to the Northwest Book and Media Expo in Vancouver, I'm also going to be at the Mid Valley Comic Art Expo. That's in Salem. And that's going to be April 18th and 19th. And the Gem State Comic Con, which is in Boise, Idaho. Super cool one over there. That's May 15th and 17th. 15th through 17th.
So that's
it for now. But I'm always working on getting new bookings in the spring and summer. So I hope to be really busy this year.
Well, thank you, Jonno, for being on this program. It's been great fun. I've learned a lot. And I think our audience is going to be loving the kind of books that you do, because they're very unique. I haven't really had this kind of a graphic novelist on my program. And it's like, okay, how do you showcase graphic novel on radio, because they can't show your pictures. But I think we did a great job. So thanks, Jonno.
Trust us, folks. The visuals are awesome. Hey, I appreciate it very much. This has been a blast. Let's do this again.
Okay. Well, thanks, Jonno, for being on the program. I really appreciate it. I love your stories and your books. I think it's great that cartoon and novels can be blended together in a whole new literature form that is engaging for all ages. And so, Jonno, hope you will be back on the program again. And I want to tell our listeners that if you want to listen to this talk again or share it with your friends, you can visit us at northwestbooktalk.com. And this whole program is a runway getting prepared for the Northwest Book Fair and Media Fest on Saturday, June 27th at Clark College. So stay tuned as we prepare for this great event. Thanks for listening.